Hey, Coffee Cuties, we are back with another banger. And today I rewatched the Good Hair documentary as an adult, so you don't have to. So let's just get right into it. So in this video, I'm going to be addressing what Chris Rock's Good Hair documentary got right, what they got wrong, and then I'm just going to give my overall perspective and opinions about the documentary. So I decided the best way to do this is to break it up into several parts. So go ahead and grab your tea, grab your popcorn, and grab your coffee because this is going to be a doozy. So first, I'm going to talk about the hair battles that they covered, then relaxers, weaves and wigs, the hair industry, selling black hair, jobs, men, and then I'm just going to end off with my overall opinion and perspectives, and then I'm going to rate the movie. So I'm not going to really show a lot of scenes from the movie because I actually don't know what is going to get copyrighted and what is not going to get copyrighted. So I'm going to try to be careful. I'm going to have some scenes throughout the movie going in the background on silent, and then I am going to show a couple scenes here and there. But anyway, so if you don't know what the Good Hair documentary is, or was rather, it was a documentary that was released in 2009. The motivation behind the documentary, according to Chris Rock himself, is his two beautiful black daughters. So he stated that one day, one of his daughters, I can't remember which one, the name, etc., but one of them came home crying and asked him why she didn't have good hair, which is very unfortunate, but that is something that a lot of young black girls face. So he decided to basically create this documentary in order to show his daughters how to love themselves and how to see the beauty within themselves regardless of what is on top of their head. So in the movie, it started out with the Barner Brothers, the hair show. I'm going to highlight a few things that I noticed. So for one, the key point that I noticed is that black people at this time, the narrative is that we created up 12% of the population, but 80% of the hair industry. It also was noted that back in 2009, which wasn't that long ago, good hair was considered straight hair, white hair, European hair only. It was not, this is before the natural hair community took off and all that stuff. So literally, when people were referring to good hair, they were referring to white hair. So within this whole hair battle segment, I really liked the lady from Happy to Be Nappy because she kind of talked about the vocabulary around our hair, and that is something that I talk about to this day. So she basically stated that she decided to switch the terms of good hair. She basically decided to say that kinkier or curly hair is the good hair and more looser straight hair is bad hair. And her reasoning behind it is that 4C or type 4 hair, which we know of today, can hold a curl in comparison to a looser texture, a straighter texture, etc. But I also want to note that within this segment, I found it was interesting that a white man named Jason was the biggest threat to all of the hair stylists within the hair battle. I thought that was interesting because even back then in 2009 all the way up until 2024, unfortunately, we always give our sauce away as black people. As we know, we are literally the blueprint when it comes to this whole hair thing, but we allow outside infiltrators to constantly come in and basically attempt to overthrow what we build. I also thought it was interesting that they basically deemed Jason as having quote unquote growing hands, because growing up, that was a phrase that we always used for hairstylists if they were able to take your hair from short to long. So it's just funny hearing some of these phrases that I heard throughout my childhood, etc. But it actually also triggered a story within me. So a white girl actually used to do my hair in elementary school. I know that is crazy. She definitely was a white girl that adapted to black culture. So my mom used to take me and my sister to the hair schools because they used to do hair for like $20, perms, flips and all. So she actually used to perm my hair, twist my hair, and flip it like every other week. So It is interesting that even as a little girl, I literally had a white girl doing my hair. I have no idea why my mom decided to choose a white girl to do my hair versus the many black hairstylists that was in the salon. But nevertheless, that is just something that was a part of my story as well. But next, we're going to get into the relaxer segment, aka the creamy crack segment. So, some key points that I took away from this segment throughout the movie is that children, as long as 3 years old, was getting perms. And actually, I remember I got a perm around 4 or 5, so that was very true. And they had different people come on and they talked about the damage that perms can have for a lifetime. It literally damages your hair follicles. And I don't know if you hear the narrative all over social media when black girls, when they are talking about long hair, talking about someone with long hair, they'll be like, oh, my hair will be that long if my mama didn't perm my hair. So it just made me think of that phrase, how they was referring to the permanent follicle damage that your hair can have from getting a perm. And it also stated the reasoning behind the perms during this era was to literally blend in. They wanted to make people feel comfortable. And in the movie, when they were describing quote unquote people, they were, of course, referring to white people. This is before the Crown Act and all that. So people definitely was experiencing a lot of that hair discrimination when it came to their jobs, etc., which we're going to touch on a little bit later. But I also it highlighted when you're getting these perms and your head is burning, the scabs. I just really, it took me back to a time when I used to get perms and literally used to be scraping out scabs in my head. Like, I couldn't even think of the vocabulary, but sores and scabs in my head, sometimes even seeing it bleed. So it's just crazy how much we used to put up with as black women to quote unquote blend in. And it also just constantly goes back to this whole edges conversation, because those perms were literally burning the edges of women's head, basically calling that traction alopecia that some women get today from wigs and weaves. We were getting it back then from perms. And then he had a segment highlighting from an actual chemist, and he described the proper name of a perm to be sodium hydroxide. I actually am going to show this little clip. I hope it's not going to get copyrighted because I'm going to speed it up a little bit. But I'm going to show this clip because I thought this clip was very important and very important for women who still get perms to see, so they can maybe be influenced to change their perspective. But I'm going to insert that and then come back with more.
Now, could you tell us exactly how dangerous sodium hydroxide is?
Sodium hydroxide will burn through your skin. The chicken is your skin.
Okay, so it'll go from my brown skin down to the white meat.
Right.
Wow. Now, you realize this goes in people's heads, right?
Sodium hydroxide?
Yeah, black women, some men, Morris Day, Prince, put sodium hydroxide in their hair to straighten it out.
Why would they do that?
To look white.
Probably what sodium hydroxide is doing is actually breaking down the protein in their hair. If it gets down into the scalp, it'll kill it at the root, and you'll actually have bald spots there.
So if you're a beautician or something, and you deal in sodium hydroxide all day,
I wouldn't do it. If you breathe just the fumes from sodium hydroxide, those fumes will ruin your lungs. They'll damage your lungs permanently. Now, this is an aluminum soft drink can, and it's been in sodium hydroxide for just over an hour. Another aluminum soft drink can that's been in for about 3 hours. And then this one has been in for about 4 hours. It has disintegrated.
So that can's got a good perm.
That can's got a good perm.
All right, we are back. And honestly, I'm with the white chemist on this. Why would you put those harmful chemicals in your head? Perms are literally causing cancer, fibroids, etc. So I just want to give a alternative to perms and relaxers. If you are a black woman who enjoys wearing your hair straight, I would recommend wearing your natural hair, your coily hair, and then straighten it, blow drying it, etc. That is a way more healthier option than putting these harmful chemicals in your head. But I just thought that was really important to highlight, to literally see the harmful effects from the perspective of a chemist. But in the documentary, it also highlighted that men also get perms. So women are not the only ones who suffer from some type of hair dysmorphia if they are unable to see themselves in their natural state. Men such as Al Sharpton, James Brown, and I actually was very shocked by the fact that the rapper Ice-T also had a perm. So I just wanted to also point out in this segment that men are also the ones who created the hair chart that the natural hair movement uses today. And that was created by Oprah's hairstylist by the name of Andre Walker. So men definitely has had their hand all up and through the hair talk, conversation, etc., even way back then, all the way down to the fact that this is a man-made documentary. But next, we're going to move into the weave and wig segment. So I thought it was very interesting to find a clip from the Tyra Banks show of women literally jumping up and down to prove whether or not their hair was real or not. I wish I could find that clip online, but unfortunately I can't. But just use your imagination. Girls, she had a black woman with a wig on, and then she had two non-black women, and they all were jumping up in the line. And then I guess if you had a wig on, your hair has less movement than it does if it was coming straight from your scalp. The things that Tyra Banks used to do back on her show was absolutely insane. But I just also want to point out that in the documentary, back in 2009, weaves and wigs were more of a beauty secret. So it was something that women lied about, etc. But today, as we know, they love to wear the exaggerated wigs all the way down to their butts and all that type of stuff. But back then, it was a best kept secret. And then it was a lot of the white women, which still happens today. One day, if you go to work with your hair short, next day is long, etc. The white women, oh, your hair grew so long. How do you get your hair to grow so long, etc.? So that whole thing was going on even back then. But I also thought it was a little bit of a funny segment within the weave and wig segment. This lady was pointing out that if you live in New York or any type of major city, 9 times out of 10, you will always see just a random string of weave going throughout the streets. And I thought that was very funny because that is true. You always see just random weave everywhere. And she said it's because like the hair shops, they sweep the weave outside of their shops and it just kind of goes on with the wind. But I guess that gave me an explanation to that. But anyway, next she moved on to the sew-ins, and the sewing process taking up to 6 hours, costing between $1,000 to $5,000 back then, like 15 years ago. So now they gotta be running at least like $10,000, etc. And it was teachers getting wigs for $1,000, and he was wondering, how are you guys affording this? And one of the hairstylists actually pointed out that she has a layaway plan for weaves and wigs and sew-ins. I never heard of that. Like, where I'm from in the Midwest, I don't think that was a possibility, but maybe if you're somewhere in New York and you are buying those $1,000 weaves, maybe that is an option that you had to take upon to be able to afford it. But I also want to point out that women throughout the documentary were stating that they felt like the weaves made them look better. And I also want to say that I feel like the weaves and wigs honestly looked better 15 years ago because they did look a little bit more natural. They looked a little bit like they did kind of confuse you about whether or not that was that girl's real hair. And I also want to end this segment by saying that once again, these women were comparing the weaves and wigs to crack cocaine. That is how addicted these women were to these wigs and weave. And unfortunately, we haven't seen much of an improvement even in today's time. But hopefully with the curly hair movement really taking off, which is the new movement to the natural hair community for type 4 hair types, we can see a change to that. But I also want to point out some interesting facts throughout the hair industry that was pointed out throughout the documentary. Basically, as we know, the Asians/Koreans run the manufacturing and the retail even back then. And basically, they would sell to each other and basically price blacks out. So we basically got the quote-unquote privilege of being the consumer, and they got the privilege of making all the money. And I also found it interesting when Al Sharpton said that we are basically contributing to our economic exploitation every time we choose to wear a wig or weave on our head. And I thought that was very true. To name it economic exploitation, that was a very good way to put it. So I may be addressing that further in a another video, but it pretty much sums up that you are pedestalizing other women's hair when you are not wearing hair of your own hair texture. But next segment, when he moved to India, that's when it got just absolutely crazy. I'm going to have the images going throughout the screen on silent, but basically the hair from India comes from a religious ceremony called Tanchi. I may be pronouncing it wrong, but I have the spelling on the screen. During the ceremony, people are self-sacrificing their hair to God, basically to receive God's blessing. So these people have no idea where the hair goes, etc. But honestly, this segment was a little bit disturbing because I'm not going to speak about other people's religious practices, etc. But I just know if they don't line up with your own, you're just not sure what's really going on with that. And I wouldn't want to wear that type of energy on my head personally, especially seeing the scenes throughout the documentary. Basically, they stated that 85% of people will sacrifice their hair up to 2 times in their life in India at some point. But it got even more crazier when the man was stating that people literally was stealing hair when you were sleeping or at the movies. Like, people will literally cut off your ponytail because in India, hair is actually more valuable than gold. I thought that was absolutely insane. And they actually sell hair by the kilo. So they don't sell it by the pound. They sell by kilos, kind of like drugs, basically. So that literally is the bread and butter. We are literally funding a lot of their economic, basically, success by buying these wigs and weaves. Now, part of this India segment that I did not enjoy was the jokes. Basically, Chris Rock was sitting down with the Indian woman who had beautiful hair. I have her photo on the screen. And he basically was saying if you see black women because she has some beautiful hair, basically to run the other way. Again, I don't feel like texturism and all the hurt and pain that black women have to go through when it comes to their hair is a laughing matter. And I didn't enjoy him making light of it. I understand he's a comedian and he's trying to basically make this more of a comedy / documentary, basically have some comedic relief. But I just feel like some of these more serious subjects do not, again, need to be a laughing matter. And that brings me to another joke when he went into the hair store and it was an Asian and black woman. I have it on silent. And basically he was trying to quote unquote sell black hair. So he basically had these random wigs. It of course was not real beautiful coily hair. It was just some random wigs he just thrown together and basically was trying to sell the wigs out of like a plastic bag. Again, I didn't think that was funny. I thought the Asian man's face, like, who wants to buy black hair? No one likes hair that sticks out. To just have like that type of narrative around our hair from outside races, I just feel like it was an inappropriate scene. I didn't enjoy it at all, but I did enjoy the scene from the lady with alopecia when she was stating the reason she didn't wear weaves or wigs despite losing her hair to alopecia is because she didn't want to hide herself. Like, she just wanted to show herself as she is, basically love herself and present herself as she is. And I thought that was very beautiful. And it basically made me think of wearing makeup. So one of the reasons that I don't enjoy wearing makeup, again, I find makeup to be very beautiful when it's done properly, is because I just don't like a sense of hiding myself. And that goes with the wigs and weaves as well. I just like to embrace my natural beauty, and I really encourage the people who listen to me to do the same. I just feel like it gives you a sense of power to just show up as your full self. But next, we're going to move into the segment of high school students, and they were talking about getting jobs and what their future may look like, etc. These girls are actually only a few years older than what I am today. So I really wonder like where some of these girls are today. But anyway, they were stating that they felt that Afro hair, the perception of Afro hair is you won't be taken as seriously in the job market, or you may feel like it may be out of place, or you just may not feel like you look put together. And this unfortunately still goes on today, but thankfully the Crown Act did pass. So now that hair discrimination that we as Black women have to face within the professional settings is now not allowed. So thankfully things have changed since 2009. But next, I'm going to move on to the segment about men. So it was highlighted that a lot of men has a preference for real hair. They were pointing out the fact that the wigs and weaves are expensive, and they were the ones who ultimately had to keep up the wigs and weave if they were dating a woman or their daughters, etc. But I also found the intimacy segment interesting as well, because a lot of men were pointing out how they are not allowed to touch their women's hair, basically lack the intimacy that you experience by touching your partner's hair, etc. And then they also briefly touched on the activities that Black women felt like at that time they could not participate in due to their wigs and weaves. So they were talking about they didn't swim, go to steam rooms, showers, etc. And I found that to be very sad. I feel like we as Black women should not limit ourselves in what we experience throughout this life. We should travel how we want, laugh as loud as we want, basically just live out loud. So I don't want things like hair holding us back. Today, thankfully, we are a lot more educated. So if you are going on vacation, etc., you can wear braids, you can wear locks, you can wear Afro textured weaves and wigs that are basically favorable within water, etc. We just have so many more options today, but thankfully we have evolved, but it was just unfortunate seeing how far we had to come to get to this point. And then I just want to end this segment by saying that Black men were stating that some of them preferred women of outside races because they were allowed to experience that intimacy throughout the relationship, etc., because they were able to touch their hair, etc. Now, I'm not really buying that. I feel like if hair is going to be a reason that you date outside your race, maybe that's just something you want to do, because there are plenty of beautiful Black women that rock their natural hair as well. So I'm not really buying the excuse that you can't find nobody that rocks their real hair. But nevertheless, to end it off, I really enjoyed the statement of our hair being our expression, and I want to add that it is part of our heritage, culture, and is a connection to our ancestors. And I also want to highlight that the winner of the hair battle that I touched on earlier was the Black man by the name of Derek J. He actually was on the Real Housewives of Atlanta as well. So I just basically thought that was great that we didn't end up giving ourselves away to a white man, especially highlighted in a documentary, when we know that there are plenty of very talented stylists. So there's no way you could tell me that a white man was the best in the world. But anyway, overall, I felt like the documentary was a little bit dated. It lacked nuance. It didn't really touch on a lot of the mental aspects when it comes to our natural hair and the struggles that Black women have to go through. Again, it was like basically put into a comedy. It also did not touch on natural hair at all, again, because this is before the natural hair community. And when they did the whole good hair versus bad hair debate, they didn't really do the looser curl texture versus the coily hair, which we know that is more prevalent today. They did mention the hair chart, but I guess since it was in its earlier phases, a lot of the natural hair allegedly hijacking and things like that hadn't took place. So I understand that they couldn't point out everything, but I still feel like looser curls, etc., versus having a more coily texture, that was a thing even back in 2009. Again, I didn't like the jokes. But nevertheless, I feel like if you were a complete novice about Black hair, whether you're white or you're just someone who did not grow up being educated about our hair, etc., then it would be an okay movie for you. But at this point, we just have so much education at our fingertips through YouTube, Google, etc. It just didn't hit as much as it may have hit over 15 years ago. But lastly, I do kind of briefly want to touch on the whole Chris Rock slap when it came to Will Smith. Of course, as we know, Will Smith was defending his wife Jada Pinkett, who suffers from alopecia, after a joke Chris Rock made during the Golden Globes, or whatever it was. If I'm not stating the right ceremony, please correct me in the comment section. But basically, he was comparing Jada to G.I. Jane. And I just thought that was very interesting, considering he did a whole documentary on good hair and just trying to understand black hair better, etc., etc. I just feel like he should have known the sensitivity of the joke. Basically, looking back, I didn't even really think about the documentary when the whole Will Smith thing was going viral, but now it just makes me even side eye him a little bit. Now, I definitely don't think what Will Smith did was okay at all, because hitting somebody, especially in that type of life where all those people of different races, and basically also ruined the black man who was producing the night. That just wasn't okay. But anyway, to sum it up, I would say that I give this documentary a 6 out of 10. But you ladies, let me know. Have you seen the Good Hair documentary? Do you feel like after watching this review, you want to watch it again? Or do you feel like I just basically spilled all the tea and there's nothing left to watch? Any and all comments are welcome. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And to tell a friend, because we are lit over here. And we have a lot more videos, a lot more topics to come. Also, if you have something that you want me to talk about, be sure to leave it in the comments. Any and all comments are welcome. I don't police the comments. But this is the end of this video. And until next time, see ya.